so many artists you meet with that they truly, great friendships, but they do not want you to speak into their life, and I don't think they trust me. So I sit there and go, we can have a great friendship, but until we cross a line of going, I really do trust you, both ways. And so for me, constantly meeting artists almost every day, there's just that quest of how do we find a connection, and it starts with honesty and some kind of trust factor that you go, I know this is short, but man, I just met you yesterday, but there's something about the way we're connecting that's really, really important. And that's what I'm kind of drawn to. So,
yeah, that's great. You guys are answering a lot of the questions we have, even as you're answering these other questions. You're covering a lot of stuff. Just so I kind of have an idea of the room, how many of you guys are to the point to where you have someone who's sort of fulfilling the management role for you? Raise your hand high. I can't. Okay. A manager, for me, as I've sort of done my thing, it's the closest thing to being married, because you really have to walk with this person. And a lot of times, before you get married, you get to date for a while. You get to figure out these things. And a lot of times in a management, you don't get that same time with a manager to court before you're sitting down to sign that contract. You know, you're meeting this person, you're having a couple of meals maybe, and then you're sitting down and making an agreement. I wanted to get to a question, if you would, over here, Mr. Dennis. What are some of the pitfalls to avoid when signing a management contract, both for the manager and for the artist, but mainly just for these guys that didn't raise their hand, a majority didn't raise their hand, that they would be in a position where they are courting and signing a management deal? What should they be looking for that kind of raises flags and says, this is bad and this is good?
Everything's going to be a little different, and my philosophy may be different than even the other guys here on the table, but and I learned a lot actually from Mike and Dan when I was at Reunion, and how they treated Michael and Amy, and even though I wasn't privy to their actual contract per se, but just how they interacted. I think in the contract itself, it ought to spell out very precisely percentages. Typically, it's going to be between the 10 and 20% range. If you're a brand new artist not generating a lot of revenue, 20% is fairly typical. Then if you're generating more revenue, it'll slide down the scale some. But it's got to be inclusive of everything for the manager to be able to make money. So if you're a manager and suddenly the artist is carving out all these little different pieces and changing numbers around, I think that's a little bit of a telltale sign that this relationship may not work. If you're an artist and the agreement or an addendum to the agreement doesn't include some sort of what I like to call the blueprint of your career for the next several months, if not a few years, then I think that's a challenge you need to be aware of. Going to a management deal, I think, is like not only going to a marriage, but it is going into business. You're in a partnership in many respects. And what they need to bring to the table, the manager, has to be, if you're identifying your vision for him or her, here's the blueprint on how we can try to get there. No guarantees we'll get there, but at least have an idea. I think that's very, very important. One of the things that we do put in our agreements and have put in our agreements have been probationary periods. Since it is a new relationship, we've actually put in clauses where we're in a 90-day or maybe a 6-month probationary period, that anytime within that time period, if either party says it's just not working, we just call it quits and walk away. After that, then everything runs for the length of the contract, which is typically about a 3-year term. And then in addition to that, for the artist, be aware of how long, they call them sunset clauses. How long is that sunset clause? That is, at the end of the contract, if things have been put in place, contracts have been signed, and commissions are coming due at some point in the future, how long do those pay out? Because that can affect your next management deal and what you want to get into. And I don't think there's a standard that I've seen on what those sunset clauses are. I know what ours tend to be, but I tend to be too much of a nice guy, I've been told. So. But I think those are some of the pitfalls to watch out for. But the bigger thing is what Mike and Ray have even attested to already, and that's the relationship part of it. Yeah. And when you go into a marriage, thank God I never had enough money to require a prenuptial agreement or even a postnuptial agreement. But if you go into these relationships and suddenly both parties are just getting incredibly intransigent, very hardcore about certain points, those are some telltale signs that we're not getting off to a good start here, because it goes to the trust factor, I think, that Mike addressed.
Yeah, write this down. Look up the word in perpetuity. Get a dictionary and look for that in the contract. Good.
I don't know what that means.
forever and ever and ever. And ever,
Okay.
and ever. Yeah.
Amen.
When the contract ends, the checks don't.
Right.
When the relationship ends, the checks don't.
And can I just jump in?
Yeah, and
there for
I'm
a second?
kidding. I'm joking.
I-
Not really. Look it up.
We call it, you say, and we all do in the business, we say it's like a marriage because it's a trust relationship but it's not a marriage. And the most important thing for you to walk through, the reason we have contracts, it's about the exit plan. Because different managers bring different gifts. And there are times when you need a manager that's gifted in a certain way that you may outgrow that. There may be a time that you go, man, this was great for a season. But then the exit plan, how do I get out of that? And most of the time, when this marriage happens, it can become so incredibly overwhelming to you that, and inclusive of so much stuff that there's a time for you to really stop and say, let's just say this great relationship that I'm walking into will end. Almost every relationship I've ever had with an artist has ended. Personally, I've seen that go through that cycle. So it will end. This is not a marriage. My marriage is still going great,
Yeah.
but my artist relationships, friendships will never go away. But business relationships, so learning how to ask the right questions, how this will end is a really critical part of moving forward in this management.
That's really good.
That's awesome.
That's really good. And make sure, I mean, we're blessed today to have these guys up here. Not every manager you will sit with in this town or any other town has the hearts that you just heard in Mr. Blanton. Look for that. Look for a guy who will sit across the table from you when the contract's on the table and then follow it up with this. Really pay attention to the heart of the person you're talking with. This is ministry that we're doing. This is a work for God that we're doing. It's not just out selling boxes of cereal. We're out sharing the gospel with the world, and we want partners and team members and ministry partners. Yes, it's business, but yet at the same time, we're out doing good work, and you need hearts like that to walk alongside of you. So I just want to make sure you know of all the people that could have been called to come into this room today to give you advice. You've been given some good hearts, and look for that as you're looking for team members.
Definitely. That's awesome. Thank you. Gary, I would like to know, okay, so say there's artists, independent artists out here, or, people in the room that are in promotional areas with an artist. If they wanted to come to you, with an artist for potential management, how is it best to get your attention? Because I work with labels and management, different people. I know stuff doesn't even get on their desk. Is it best to take a meeting? What's the process?
That's a great question. I like to answer that by following up what these guys have said, because it's all about a relationship. The guys that work with me, the artists that I'm working with, know that with me it starts with a relationship. We have to sit around the table, or I go to their homes. We sit in a restaurant, we sit in their dining room and have coffee and meet for hours and hours. I do a consultation for 8 to 10 hours with an artist before I'll even consider picking them up. We want to make sure that the relationship's going to be there. And so if you're not willing to invest in the relationship, but all you want to do is use the manager to get you from point A to point B, then the relationship's not going to be as healthy as it could be. And so I'm looking for people that are wanting to partner with me so that I can me to partner with them in a relationship, because we're all building the same kingdom together, right? And so to me, that's what it's about. Let's start with a relationship. Let's find out where you want to go, what I can do to help you get from point A to point B, and then if you're willing to go there with me, then we partner together.
So taking a meeting, going to lunch, any